everybody. Welcome to Coming and Going, a podcast that is designed to be a biblical guide to your parenting journey. My name is Joe Crabb. I have the privilege and blessing of being one of the pastors here at Woodside. Been here most of my life, and most of my time at Woodside, I've had the opportunity of working and ministering alongside families. Kids, students, parents, leaders, and the like. And what a joy it is that God, in his grace and kindness, has not only saved us from something, but for something, that he allows us to be a part of his kingdom. He allows us to be a part of a spiritual family. And as such, we get conversations like the one we're going to have today, and conversations that we like to have month in and month out on the podcast, conversations that allow us to learn from one another, to grow together, to be edified and encouraged, to ask questions as we're going through just the nuances of life as we are coming and going, looking to lead and guide our students in the way of the Lord. Father, to see our kids grown up, to grow as young men and young women after God's own heart. And so we, again, thank you for tuning in. We hope, as always, that as you're listening, that it's encouraging to hear about the mistakes we've made and the grace that we have been given from God as we look to, again, just grow in our understanding and be drawn closer to Christ. And so I'm very blessed for today's podcast, for us to be talking about really about social media, about technology, about the way that it impacts and influences our lives, and obviously our kids' lives all the more, as they are indeed digital natives. And this is the day and age and a world that they grow up in. They will not know life without the internet. Many of them know life without Alexa. And I do not apologize for hopefully maybe setting off the Alexas in your home right now and doing it again and again. But I'm excited for obviously the gift of technology and how it allows us as brothers and sisters to connect with one another, as we are joined today all the way from Australia is author and pastor Dave Adamson. And so, Dave, thank you so much for being here. I know in my notes it says I'm supposed to intro you. I would love for you to intro you. I would love for you to be able to share with our listeners a bit about who you are, what God has been doing in your life, and what ministry opportunities he's blessed you with in this current season. Of course, share anything else about your family and on the line. So
Yeah. Well, Joe, thanks for having me. I'm so glad that I get to be here today and join you and have a conversation that's really significant and important. A little bit about me. I mean, the most important thing is that I'm the husband of Meg Adamson. Second most important thing is I'm the dad of Chelsea, Ella, and Jordan Adamson. They're my three girls who probably, I shouldn't say girls anymore, they're young women. They are 19, 20, and 23. So, they're certainly grown through this social media age. One of the things that, just to kick off this part of the conversation, and introduce myself at the same time, one of the things I love that God has opened up doors for me is that I've been a social media and online pastor since 2008. Now, back in 2008, we still had dial-up internet. So it was a little bit of a different landscape then. But just growing up in that environment from a ministry perspective, being able to pastorally care for people and reach people through online technology has given me the ability as a dad to bring in some of those things that I've learned along the way in my ministries in New Jersey, and I worked at North Point in Atlanta for 7 years as the online pastor there. And the greatest blessing, one of the greatest blessings I've had, is how that opportunity in full-time ministry has helped my parenting by giving me some tips, and tricks and hacks and tools to navigate being a dad in the postmodern, post-Christian world where my kids are digital natives and I feel like I'm a digital missionary, right? I had to learn the language and I got parachuted in to this whole digital environment, but my kids have grown up in this environment. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and hopefully introduce what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I love for our listeners to be able to hear what you just said. Hey, what I learned almost vocationally and through the ministry opportunities that you had been presented with, how it does apply practically to your
Yeah.
day-to-day life and looking to imprint that upon your children. And as we know too, as you know, the digital landscape changes so quickly. You know, this episode is being recorded just a week after Apple Vision Pro has been
Yeah.
released, and seeing the I'm going to call them tweets because, you know, a purist history
Yeah.
wise, but seeing those things like, hey, that just like when the iPhone dropped in '07 and the landscape quickly changed, and not
Yeah.
saying that this is what it's going to be. We know things can quickly change, and similar,
Yeah.
being a digital missionary, being a millennial and seeing certain things, I'm like, man, yeah, we have some smart devices in our home, and my kid is going to grow up in this, and
Yeah.
even just assume this. I'm was just talking with my mother the other day and just thinking about how odd it is. I could just tell her, hey, mom, just tell me the order and I'll get it door dashed over to us. And like,
Yep.
knowing that so much of that is the Internet of Things at
Yeah.
play that
Yeah.
is just influencing our day-to-day lives. And we know that social media especially is having such a deep impact,
Yep.
influence on us as adults, but our whole culture, and especially those that are most impressionable, and that
Yeah.
is our kids and students. And so I thank you so much again for sharing, for the work that you're doing, and for ministering to us both from your pastoral perspective, your perspective as an author, as you've worked with different churches, as
Yeah.
well as a dad. So I'm going to ask you some questions and just let
Yeah.
this conversation go as we look to encourage the listener. And let's just start first and foremost at what are some of the misconceptions that individuals have surrounding social media?
Yeah, look, as a parent, you know, especially for the people who are listening to this, who are parents, and you know, processing that idea of some misconceptions that parents might have around social media, I think there's a couple that stand out to me. The first one that always pops into my brain as soon as I hear that word misconceptions about social media is that not all social media is bad, and not all social media is created equal. So we have to
Mm,
be aware as parents of the good side of social media, but also be aware of the bad side of social media. It's like teaching your kids to drive a car, right? There comes a point where, as a parent, part of your responsibility is to help your kid be a responsible driver on the road. Now, we don't go into that process saying only the bad stuff about driving, the possibility of them
yeah.
having a car accident that might alter the rest of their life. But we also don't go in talking about just all the positives about driving a car. We always balance that out. I think it's the same with social media. We have to be aware of and talk with our kids about the positives of it, but also be aware of and talk to our kids about the negatives of it. So understanding that there's good and bad, I think, is one of those misconceptions, purely because there are parents who either say all social media is great, and for whatever reason we want our kids to be on it, and there's others who say it is so bad and we need to keep our kids away from it. One practical thing, Joe, that pops out in my mind that I had to learn through you know, being a parent in the digital age is just the idea that just because you've got your kids' Instagram account, for example, set to private, doesn't mean it's private. Private accounts are not always private. And your kids, this is the other thing, if you know, we're talking to the parents who are listening, your
Yep.
kids know more about technology, your kids know more about that social media platform than you ever will. And so you might think that you've got it set to private, so therefore they're safe, but kids know ways around things that you don't even realize. I thought I was the technologically savvy person in my family. And then I hear my kids talking and I'm like, oh, I didn't know anything. So yeah, we have to be aware that our kids are
Yeah.
much more well-versed in the language of social media, in the interaction and the operation of social media than we will ever be. So we have to keep the lines of communication open. For me, it's not a social media issue. It's actually a parenting issue. Social media
Oh,
will
okay. Yeah.
always
Yeah.
be an issue, but it's never an
Yeah.
excuse. It's never an excuse just to let our kids go wild, in the same way that we're not going to let our kids get in the car and drive off to their friend's house if we know they've been drinking, or if we know they're angry
Mhm.
or sad, or if we know that they're really tired. You know, my eldest daughter yesterday was on her way out and she said, I'm really tired. And my wife and I were like, hey, are you okay to drive? Are you going to be fine? Can you text us when like, we had that conversation. It has to be the same with social media as well. Because in the same way, we don't want our kids to get on social media and post when they're angry, right?
Yeah.
So we have to just be
That's
aware.
good.
So I would say that social media, as a parent, social media will always be an issue, but it should never be an excuse.
That's good. That's good. Social media will always be an issue, but it will never be an excuse. And you're sorry. We also it's social media is not going away.
Yeah.
It will be here. Even as you're saying, hey, social media, even your Instagram, they set it to private. It's not really private. There's a chance it's not private. Also knowing it might be private in the sense that, hey, someone might randomly not be able to find it, but it still exists in somewhat of a public space because it's private, like you said, but they've got followers, right? You might even be soliciting, you might be even like gatekeeping who their followers are, but it's like they still have people, there's still an influence, there's still exposure that has impact and influence on their real life. They might only follow their best friends, but when they see one of those best friends hanging out without them, that's still an influence regardless of the fact that it's been set. And you're right, when it comes to I've talked with parents before, like, oh, we thought we had their passwords, we had this, then we found out they were using a VPN and going around. And it makes me think often what we experience of what Paul writes in Romans 1, where he says, they will find new ways of doing evil. Like the evil's always existed, the exposure to things, so on and so forth. But this is just a new expression of it.
Yeah, totally.
Humorously enough, Paul couples that right next to the line where he says, they dishonor their mother and father. Yeah. So most parents, we are at times experiencing not a new expression. The evil's still there. The potential for deceit and misleading and hurt and harm and jealousy, God, all those things have been a part of our world since sin has entered into it. Yeah. Social media is now just one of the ways in which it expresses itself. But what you said is so hopeful though too. If that has always expressed itself in our world, it's not a social media issue, it's a parenting issue. Parents have been doing stuff about it since the beginning of time.
Exactly.
We still can do things about it.
Yeah, Joe, you are so right. And what we need to realize as parents is sometimes there is that intentionality, right? So if we set our kids' accounts to private, they can intentionally set up a VPN or get around it in those ways. But then there's other less nefarious ways that that information can get out as well, right? They might just have it set to private, but their friends' accounts aren't necessarily set to private. And when they comment or they share or they repost what your kid is doing, suddenly that becomes a little bit more public. And so we have to be aware of those sorts of things when we go into it. So that's just one of those misconceptions that I think parents need to have. But there are a bunch, I think, positive and negative considerations that parents need to have when it comes to allowing their kids to be on social media. And that's a big part of any conversation around what, parenting through a digital age is. What are those considerations?
Yeah. I'd love for you to share some of those considerations for parents, because I feel like what you just shared is so helpful. Because if I, as a parent, feel like I can provide a foolproof way for them to engage in social media, and what you just said is something I hadn't thought about before. It really, there's no such thing as privacy. As we actually kind of know, there's no such thing as security. If somebody really wanted to hack my stuff, they really could. If they're hacking these corporations and governments, like who am I?
And using the car as
really good, but not that good.
Again, using driving and the car as the example, there are so many things we can do as parents to safeguard our children around social media. Around like we do around driving, we're making sure that the car's in working order, make sure they got their seatbelts on. But as parents, we are often acutely aware of the negative sides of it, of any interaction with our kids, and so we have to be aware of that from a social media point of view. So if there are obviously positive and negatives. Let me start with some of the negatives. Obviously, for younger kids, for any age kids really, but I think we're more aware of this for our younger kids, is that social media gives them an opportunity to be exposed to inappropriate or upsetting content, whether that is stuff that people are posting or whether it's comments on their own posts that turn nasty. Cyberbullying is a huge issue. We have to be aware of them uploading what we might consider inappropriate content that might be embarrassing. We might think as parents, hey, this is going to embarrass you later on. And so we have to be aware of that and have conversations around that. Sharing personal information with strangers, that was a big topic of conversation for me in my household with my kids, and teaching my kids how not to share information with people who they don't really know. As I said, cyberbullying, even things like just being heavily inundated with targeted marketing and target advertising, that can be really impactful in a whole bunch of ways. And then you brought it up, data breaches. Every organization has data breaches, and there's an opportunity there for your information to be either leaked out or sold to other organizations. So we need to be aware of those negatives for sure. But I would also stress that there are so many positives to social media as well that parents need to consider as well. First and foremost, social media has become such a big part of the social life of your kids and students. Like, that's a huge part of how they interact with their friends. They meet with their friends face to face, but they continue to connect with them offline through social media apps and through Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. So as a parent, you have to be aware when you take away your kid's phone because they've done something wrong, you're actually taking away their access to their friendship circle as well. You're isolating your kid. That was something that I had to learn. I didn't understand when I first said, hey, because you didn't empty the dishwasher, I'm going to take your phone away for 3 days. I didn't realize why my daughter was so acutely reactionary to that what I thought was a minor thing. But I realized for her, she was going to go through 3 days where she felt alone, cut off from her friends, and isolated. So I had to start to understand that. Oh my gosh. So social media, what I learned is social media is a big part of their social life. So and that's a good thing. Social media is an opportunity for them to learn new things. They can learn what it means they can use it for school research projects, and they can learn about relationships and interacting and group settings. So it's a great way for them to learn that. Hobbies and interests that they can learn about from watching YouTube, for example. It's an opportunity for them to be creative. It's an opportunity for them to potentially start a career. As parents, we often look at careers in a much different way than our kids do. And for a kid, there was a research study done in the UK in 2021 where they asked, I think it was like 14,000 students who were aged between 13 and 18 about what their what was the dream job for them that they were aspiring to. And the number one answer was a YouTuber. So, we as parents might look at that and get concerned. Now, just to alleviate all the parents listening, your concerns, number 2 was to be a doctor. So, it's not all bad.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. So social media is an opportunity to express creativity in a way that could ultimately become an income revenue raising thing and a career opportunity, a legitimate career opportunity for people. So there are positives and there are negatives. And I think as parents, we have to weigh up and consider both sides of the coin in the same way that we do when for just everyday things like kids driving a car. If I send my son out to mow the lawn, there's a chance that he might get injured, he might fall over and cut himself or whatever, but we still do it because we see the benefits of it as well.
All that is so good, because really what we're doing is we're providing different buckets and frameworks for understanding about social media. That it's not just, hey, one side, if I am set to privacy and the privacy controls and we're good there, everything's good. It's good from, yes, that practical end, those various aspects of privacy and data and what you're sharing with individuals, to even the communal sense, like you talked about in shepherding, leading your daughter through. I've now isolated her over these 3 days because that's been taken away, to future sense, career sense, and so on and so forth. So there's so many different facets to it, which are good to have an understanding whether different things change as our understanding changes of social media, as our kids enter different phases of life. The way my daughter as a 6-year-old is going to engage with technology is going to be different than a 16-year-old, as well as new platforms being introduced. Be Real and Laps and on down the line. It's ever evolving, ever changing, but being mindful of those different buckets in different seasons helps the approach, especially knowing, hey, what are some maybe the baseline safeguards that parents should have and put in place? So what are some of those that you've come across that you encourage parents to have when it comes to kids and students and using social media?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joe. I think for me, there's a whole bunch of different ones we could talk about, but if I could land on a couple that might be helpful and practical for your audience, for me, the biggest one is we need to continually talk with our kids about social media. The best way to protect them from social media is to talk to them about social media. So when my kids, even at the age that they are, 19, 20, 23, when they want to get on a new platform, they still come and talk to me about that. And that happens because we've had
That's awesome.
ongoing conversations. It's like when your kids get to the age and you have to have the quote unquote sex talk with them. It's not a sex talk, it's a sex conversation. You're constantly having conversations with
Yep.
them about that, in the same way you
Yep.
should have constant ongoing conversations about social media. For us, practically, one of the first things that we did, my wife and I did, when our kids got phones, was we made sure that every mobile device in our house, from our iPads to our iPhones, had the same password. Everybody in our house has the same password. One of our daughters has moved away to college. Guess what? She's still got the same password. And that just provided us a level of accountability. We were like,
That's
hey, we're going to give you this phone, but you've got to have this passcode so that mom and I can have access to your phone at any time we feel like we need to. But at the same time, we have the same passcode. So if you ever want to check on what we're doing, you can have access to that as well. So that joint accountability
good.
was absolutely huge. And look, I'm not going to lie. If I can speak to the dads for just a second who are listening to this, dads, if you have
Please
the
do.
same password as your wife and your wife knows your password, that's going to build a level of trust with her that is immeasurable. Because as guys,
Yeah.
we have this temptation to continue to look at things that we're not supposed to look at by giving your wife
Yep.
access to your phone at any point, anytime. My wife knows she can come and grab my phone at any time and open it up and look at whatever I'm looking at. That level of accountability is not just big in my marriage. It was big as a dad to my girls as well, because I was trying to raise them to find partners who treated them like I'm treating my wife. So that was a huge thing for me. We always made sure also that if my kids joined a new account, they had to allow us as their mum and dad to follow them, and they had to follow us. So that way we could
Yeah.
just track their content. Hey, we saw that photo that you posted. Hey, this person, I see that Joe guy, he commented on your thing. Is he a friend of yours? Well, I don't really know Joe, but like it allowed us to have those ongoing conversations. So that was another big
Yeah.
one as well for us. So those two would be the biggest two that I would say. Well, actually three. Continue to have conversations and constantly have conversations with your kids about social media. All set the same passwords on every mobile device, and then make sure that there's a follow for follow with your parents and between the parent and the kid, because those things just continue to open up those conversations. There's a whole lot of other things we could talk about
Yeah.
some of the other safeguards you can put in place, but I think those three are the three biggest, and they're the three that your audience can put into place today. They can start doing that right now.
It's so good. That's good. As soon as you talked about the same passcode thing with you and your spouse, that fosters trust. It deepens the relationship. It removes any potential obstacles. It's so good. And I love the idea of doing it with your kids, because it's just
Yeah.
like, man, it just holds you accountable all the more. It
Yeah.
refines you all the more. And it models to them. Like you said, you're modeling to your girls. I'm a girl dad too, so that resonates all the way.
Yes.
Even more, like you're modeling to them, yes, hey, this is what it looks like to act with integrity, to act with trust, to have accountability in such a real-time, practical way, especially because there is such this privacy aspect of like, oh, that's my phone.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
my text. Those are my things or whatever. But to really be more communal, more familial, and deepen those relationships, man, that's I'm processing that one and take it. I'm ready to change we gotta find a great password, one that's easy and secure and all that stuff. But I do want to ask it's a little bit of a curveball question. I apologize for throwing it at you. But when you talked earlier about when you had that realization as a dad that when you took your daughter's phone away for 3 days, how it potentially isolated her, how did you change up your approach to parenting either over those 3 days, because there's probably still a need for a consequence, or did that alter how you then delivered that moving forward. Like, how did you redeem that moment with her, as well as meet that felt need of that isolation while still holding accountable for
Yeah.
actions? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense, dude. I think obviously as parents, we're trying to teach our kids, and sometimes the way that we teach them is to help them see that there are consequences to their actions, right?
Yep.
What in
Yeah.
that moment, Joe, I didn't realize the severity of that consequence.
Yep.
I mean, I guess in a way, the punishment didn't the punishment didn't suit the crime, because
Yep.
I was taking something. I thought it was a minor thing. Hey, you didn't empty the dishwasher. Give me your phone. Like, I told you 3 times to do it, so let's just take the phone away for 3 days. What I thought was a small thing was actually a huge thing that I didn't realize in that moment. So what I started to do was that would taking a phone away was left to a really big breach of trust. That would be something that would suddenly became part of my parenting style. So yeah, I assumed it was just a small thing. Hey, I'm just going to take you. You're not going to be able to watch YouTube videos for a couple of nights. But I
Yeah.
didn't realize the impact of like, I was removing her. I was essentially grounding her. Like, old
Yeah.
school grounding. I grew up getting grounded. You can't go outside for 2 weeks. Like, that was my isolation. For her, taking the phone away was her isolation. So, it's just figuring out. It's not that you shouldn't do that. It's just you got to
Yeah.
pick your moments to do that and have that awareness of how your kids see their devices, because it's probably different to how you see your device. Look at my device and go, yeah,
So
it's a
true.
way that I can connect, but it's a work tool as well. Whereas for kids, it's a social tool. Kids and students will really lean into the social side of social media way more than as parents we might have a little bit of that, but our relationships don't hinge on whether or not somebody saw us at a party and we took a photo of it or commented on a thing, or who
Yeah.
commented on our things. So for me, it was just about weighing up, does the punishment fit the crime? And so that's how I started to process it a little bit differently.
That's a really good perspective. That's a really good, and I think it's a principle thing that influences our practical expression of saying, "Hey, I still want a consequence, accountability,
Yeah.
and so on to help them to grow, but to see the measure of that."
Yeah.
It kind of makes me think at times when parents, say, "Oh, you can't go to church, you can't go to youth group," and realize
Yeah.
they're like, "Okay, whatever, you just can't go out tonight or whatever." But like for them, it's not just this entertainment aspect or this fun aspect. There's a deeper thing. It has a weightier thing at the time that they might not
much weightier.
realize. So I think I appreciate that. I appreciate you answering and revealing a little bit how that helped you grow, sympathize, empathize, and that informed your parenting. You still allowed those things to be true. There was still consequence for the action, but a greater understanding of your daughter, and that led to a greater opportunity for ministry. And so will you share any other ways in which you yourself personally, or how parents can utilize their social media to engage with their kids that will help deepen that understanding?
So, there's a couple of things. One for me is leveraging social media is something that I do for my kids in a lot of ways. So on Twitter, for example, I have a hashtag that I use, stuff I want my daughters to know. And essentially,
great.
I'm leveraging my Twitter account, because I'm a purist like you. I'm not going to call it X. On my Twitter account,
thank you.
I'm using that as a tool for me to teach my kids everything I know about leadership and ministry. And so, there's going to be a point where I'm going to pass away, and my kids, I hope, will be able to go to a platform like Twitter and see everything that my dad wanted to teach me about ministry or about leadership. Life hacks will be on Twitter, and I just have to type in stuff I want my daughters to know as a hashtag, and they'll find it. So likewise with my Twitter account, about 2013, I made a determined shift in my Instagram account to stop just posting photos of my food or photos out the airplane window or photos of my feet sitting by the pool, because I wanted to leverage that platform as a place where, again, after I pass away, my girls can learn everything their dad knew about faith, the Bible, and Jesus. And so I started leveraging my Instagram account to teach my kids daily devotionals. Hey, this is what this Hebrew word means. Hey, this verse, I unpack it in this way, because I wanted to create this like an old school, when you used to bury a time capsule. for me, I wanted my Instagram to be a time capsule of what I learned about faith, what I knew about faith, so that my kids could always go to it. And I especially did it for my youngest daughter, who's dyslexic, who doesn't, who loves Jesus and loves going to church, but struggles to read the Bible because of her dyslexia. I wanted to be able to create a space where on Instagram she could look at a photo and I could leverage that photo as almost like a visual parable to lean into a specific verse or a specific teaching of Jesus. And when I started to do that, I saw her come alive because she understood something that she didn't understand before from just reading alone, because she has trouble in that area. So yeah, I've been using my social media for specific purposes as a dad for quite a few years now. And then I think there's another aspect to this that we maybe haven't touched on. Is it's not just necessarily about how we leverage social media, but it's also about how we use our devices. There was a study done by the University of California just recently that says the way that parents leverage their phone, just holding their mobile device in their hand when they are talking to their kids, shows a level of distraction that the parent has that shapes the emotional intelligence of their kid. It also leads to them having a self-esteem, like they'll perceived lack of parental engagement from holding a phone while you're talking to your kids, or while you're sitting on the couch together, or while you're watching a movie. Those things actually have an impact on our kids that we might not see because they're reading it as my parent is not engaged with you at the moment. And that the studies reveal that has a big impact on their emotional intelligence. So I'm trying to be more aware of that than ever before at the moment. Like, it's not just what I post, it's what I'm holding in my hand when I'm talking to them. And this, we think that, if it's dinner time with the family, I put my phone on the table and it's upside down, then that's better. No, it's just not better. It's still a distraction, and my kids don't feel like they've got my full attention. For us, that became a big part of, we talked earlier about the safeguards. That became a big part of the safeguard for us. How do we communicate to our kids that we're engaged with them? And we have this box that we put our phones into. It started out as a wooden box at dinner time, and once a week we would put all of our phones into this wooden box, and that wooden box would go up on the fridge, and we would have 24 hours of us just being with our kids. Now that's shifted, and technology has gotten better, right? So there's this company called ARO, ARO. They're a Christian organization they're an organization made up by Christians out of Atlanta, and they created a thing called the ARO box, the ARO box, and it's essentially an upgraded version of my wooden box, right? So we can put our phones into these slots, and all of our phones get charged while they're in the box. So it's a family-sized thing. And plus, then we all have an app that automatically starts as soon as you put your phone in the box, and the app is calculating screen time, and it essentially gamifies you not having your phone. And so at the end of the week, you can all look and go, well, who had their phone offline for the longest and who was the most engaged? Because you get a score at the end of every day, right? And so we've started, that process changed that whole idea of just putting our phones away. But it's that intentional time where we're going to put our phones away so that we can actually connect as a family. And so, holding how we hold as parents, how we hold our phones, how often we hold our phones. There was a study also done that said that 93% of adults in the US keep their phone at arm's length all the time. When I started talking about my phone, I reached over and I grabbed my phone because it's within arm's length all the time.
Yeah.
But as parents, our kids are picking up on that, right? What's at arm's length? Dad's always got his phone in his hands. And I always had excuses, Joe. Always. Well, I was just. And my wife, in her wisdom, God used her voice to speak to me. And it's always hardest when God speaks to me using my wife's voice. But she said to me, hey, do you realize that every time somebody asks you about your phone, you are always just? You always say that word, I was just, I was just, I was just, I was just.
Yeah.
And it's not just to your kids if you're always on your phone. And I was like, dang, drop the mic. Like, all right, I get it. God, I hear your voice. It's little things like that we have to be aware of. It's not just what we post to social media. It's our connection to holding on to these things. And we need to leverage as parents, and I think as pastors too. So for the pastors who are listening to this, Our job as pastors, our job as parents, is to turn our mobile devices from a device of distraction into a device of discipleship. We have the ability to
Yeah.
do that, but we
Yeah.
have to be
There it is.
intentional.
Yeah. And I love how you do it too, because there's the end where you're putting a digital footprint for your daughters, both now and, in
Yeah,
posterity, to go back and check out these tweets, check out these Instagram posts, say, hey, what do I
yeah,
want them to see is true of their dad? And another way for them to connect with me. But then in the same respect, it's like when, my grandfather passed away, if he had a journal right now, I'm
yeah,
able to write and read and see what he was thinking and going
yeah,
through our old VHS tapes, like seeing these things. We have access to doing that all the more, but because we have access to doing it constantly, it invites us to be more intentional, saying, okay,
yes,
what do I want them to be able to see? What am I leaving this generation and the next generation with? And still being
yeah,
intentional. And like you said, right now, what are we doing to disciple our kids, both for how they use social media and how
yeah,
they almost the control and approach they have with social media of saying,
yeah,
we're going to have these screen-free times. We're going to put our phones away. We're going to be more aware of this and even be cognizant of the fact of, do I need to have it right with me? Can I just
yeah,
put it in the sofa table when I come home? Can I put it in the box?
yeah,
It's almost a sense of humility too, of like saying, hey, I'm not that important. I don't need people to be constantly
yes,
accessing me, or even
yeah,
saying, hey, I'm not going to put this work email over this. I mean,
yeah.
your kids are never going to know how many meetings you're at, but they will know how many moments that you've missed,
Mm,
and how many memories we've missed out on because
bro,
I just have to do this. Or it's just this quick second. So you're
I'm gonna
right. There's
tweet
these
that.
opportunities.
I'm going to
Please
tweet that.
do.
Can you say
Okay.
that? Can you say that again? Can you say it again? Your kids won't remember how
Yes.
many meetings you're.
Your your kids will never. Your kids won't remember how many meetings you were at, but they will remember how many moments you've missed.
Oh gosh, dude, that is so good, and that's exactly my point. That's exactly what it is. Intentionality. You said that word intentionality several times. It requires intentionality. It's intentionality in the moment. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put my phone down. I'm gonna put my phone away while I spend
Yep.
time with my family. But it's intentionality for the future. Could you imagine, Joe? Could you imagine what Twitter would be like as a platform if every Christian went
Mhm.
into Twitter going, my kids, my grandkids might read this post. They
Yeah.
might read what I'm about to tweet right now. If they just took that
Yeah.
second to pause and consider the intentionality that your future
It's
grandkids
good.
might read that, I bet you it would cause them to
Yeah.
take stock of what they're about to tweet.
Randomly, I've had that thought before too. Kind of, hey, early adopter to Twitter, Instagram, all this stuff. We're growing up with it and hopping on it. It's like,
Yeah.
are we supposed to just do this for the rest of our lives? Like, is this all? But oftentimes, at first, we're not thinking about that. But your point is so valuable. There is a chance. This is now a part. Just like you
Yeah.
might go to, if I was to pass away, you go to my house and here's Joe's books and here's Joe's clothes and here's Joe's
Yeah.
photos. And here's
Yeah.
Joe's social media, and here's Joe's
Yeah.
tweets, and here's Joe's
Yeah.
like Instagram posts, and that speaks just as much to the object you find in my home as the objects you find out online. And what am I conveying
Yeah.
to the generations to come? So,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, who was Dad?
Yeah.
Who was Joe as a friend and as a father and as a husband and as a grandfather? So, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
This is great. There's so much. You said this too. This is an opportunity for us to disciple and for them to evangelize
Yeah.
and for to make the gospel known. And so,
Yeah.
as we kind of get ready to wrap up here and thinking about, hey, parents who are maybe want to encourage their kids and thinking about social media as a tool of
Yeah.
discipleship and evangelism, how can we equip our kids and students to utilize their social media accounts to reach their friends and others with the gospel?
Yeah, yeah, that's becoming more prevalent in this day and age, right? And as it should be, in my opinion. Obviously, as an online pastor, I mean, according to history, I was the 8th online pastor in the world. So I feel like I've been doing this for a long time now.
Wow.
And one of the things that I've learned and I've seen evolve, is just this: the way that Christians and the capital C Church have shifted their relationship with social media a lot. I mean, it used to be that churches and Christians would post a random Bible verse and that they thought was enough to express their faith, express their Christianity. Obviously, that is taken completely out of context, and there's no context provided to that for the unchurched person who might be reading. So one of the things I always say to people, hey, if you're going to start sharing your faith on social media, the first thing is don't just post random out of context Bible verses. Provide some of that context. Provide why is that verse important to you? Why did you post that today? What significance does it have? So that your unchurched friends can start to get an idea of why the Bible is important to you. The other thing is I always encourage people to answer questions people are actually asking. A lot of us as Christians are answering, and especially churches and the churches that I work with around the world, this is very prevalent. They're answering questions that nobody is asking. We need to start answering questions people are actually asking about faith. And the big one for me, Joe, would be this. I think the only AI that churches and Christians need to worry about is authentic interactions. We need to be having authentic interactions with people, whether it's the posts that we're putting out ourselves or if it's in the comment section of their posts. We have to have authentic interactions with people. And when they start to see that, hey, Joe's a normal guy, but he's just a normal guy who loves Jesus. And I kind of, there's something about Joe that I'm kind of drawn to because he seems to have a great marriage. He seems to have a great parent. He seems to be intentional and have a purpose for everything that he does. That's when they'll start to ask some serious questions about your faith. Just posting a random Bible verse doesn't necessarily do that. We have to provide context, and that context comes through authentic interactions. So I tell Christians all the time, that's the AI you should be focusing on and prioritizing the most is authentic interactions in everything that you do, whether that's online or whether that's on site, face to face with people. Be authentic, be real, be vulnerable.
Good. And that's exactly what people are longing for. The studies out there, the data is out there that shows that, hey, although we're the most connected we've ever been, people are more isolated than ever, are feeling that sense of loneliness. And they do. They just, as I could see this part of you, but I want to see, does that authenticity, that you are a real person, that, and yes, please show me the cute family photos and family vacations. That's a part of who you are, but show me the whole thing, not just a glimpse. And knowing that as followers of Jesus Christ, that does provide opportunity because people are longing for that. They want realness. They want that authenticity. And we can then connect with them, point them back to the Creator. Why do they long for that? And where does that ultimately fulfill that? Not social media, not technology, not in the greatest things of our day, but has been satisfied in and through the gospel, that longing of the soul. This has been so good, so encouraging. I'm drinking from a fire hose here. Again, this is a huge part of my heart with having kids and seeing them raised up. And my daughter, the oldest, is at 6, and this is becoming more and more a part of our life, as we know, but also for me personally, how am I approaching my social media, looking to see others impacted, but how am I interacting with my phone in the home? And so this has been so great. Thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in and listening. Dave has been such a great resource to us as a church, both in this episode and across, and to the church at large. We are going to drop a link to your website and a copy of this episode for the listener to be able to check out what you're working on, follow you on social media, get an example of how you're modeling this to your daughters as well as ministering to others, and for us to check out, grab a copy of your book, Meta Church, How to Use Digital Ministry to Reach People and Make Disciples. And so, Dave, thank you so much for your time today. Listeners, thank you guys for listening. As always, if there's any way that we can be an encouragement to you, please don't hesitate to reach out, and know this, that we love you. We're praying for you as you are coming and going.